and welcome to episode 3 of Ed Talk. Today we're featuring Kendall Burdette, also known as Actual No I'm Not. How are you doing, Kendall?
I'm doing good, thank you.
Cool.
How are you,
So
Ed?
I'm hanging out. You know what I mean? Like obviously
Yeah,
didn't do as well as you did at Seattle, but yeah. So today I guess we'll take a look at your list and we can go over some of the choices that you made today.
sure.
So yeah, looking here, like how did you end up on this list?
Uh, okay, so what I originally had did was I put together a list of all the cards that I wanted, and it ended up being 65 cards. So then I had to cut down to 60. So this is 60 cards. The other five would be the two brooms to make eight one drops, a third Medusa, and two crabs. I really like the 3-2 lady split. Just seems to be like the most normal kind of average split between ladies.
Hmm.
But yeah, I wasn't ever going to play more than 60 cards, so I needed to find something to cut. So I think I pretty comfortably cut down to the two or to the 6 1 drops. Um, and then I let go of that third Medusa, which I can't tell how much I might have missed it during the tournament. It seemed to work out okay. And then ultimately decided to get rid of the two crabs as opposed to like maybe some people were cutting on Maui or cutting like an Elsa or something like that. But yeah, um, yeah,
Like
that's essentially how I just like I guess came
yeah.
up with the deck. I or with this specific list. I had tested your list earlier in the week with Zan. And had decided that I still wanted to play like the Flynn Sisu castles
Yeah.
as opposed to trying to play like full control.
Yeah. But I see that you have like the two copies of Finders Keepers. Like, how did you feel about that card over the tournament?
Yeah, overall, so when I did like test your list, I did recognize okay that like Finders Keepers is strong and it does help the green steel matchup.
Mm-hmm.
I also just like kind of came to the conclusion that if other Ruby Amethyst were going to be running this in their deck for green steel, that you kind of had to play it like just by virtue of other people playing it because the mirror is slow enough that like if they're playing draw threes, you will just, I mean, you'll just lose if you're not playing it. So you kind of had to include it in your deck if other people were going to be playing it. So still fairly good into the mirror and red blue. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I thought four was a little much. I think 2 to 3 is the number. Michael Majors, who got top four, he ended up playing three. His list is a little different than this, but I stayed with Majors for the weekend since he's local and yeah. But yeah, Finders Keepers I think is has been a good addition.
Yeah. Because I guess like originally it came from like the Guillaume Wafatapa style, but he wasn't running like any goat, right? Did you ever try like that version without the goat?
Uh I never got a chance to like try the like zero goat version. I can't remember if he still played like castles or not.
I think he was still
But
on
he didn't play
castles, yeah. Like he was trying to do
yeah.
like Finders into like B prep castle kind of line.
hmm No, the first time I had tried the list was once he won that set champs.
Mm-hmm.
I had made a list that was close to this without the finders, where I was just going to play the four Elsa. I mean, I think it was well, it was close to this list. It might have been 3-1 on ladies or something, but it would have been 8 1 drops instead of zero finders.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, that's when I tried the full control version.
Yeah. And I think I saw like your earlier list also only had like two copies of Elsa. Like what was like the reasoning to like go up to the four copies?
I expected just like a large increase in green steel, and I wanted to have just like eight quote unquote answers to Diablo. So the green steel discard deck's main win cons are Diablo and Beast. And so even if Elsa wasn't nabbing a Diablo, a lot of times if they played Beast on five, simply using Elsa just to put damage on Beast to start preventing the card draw, or let's say you had Snake or a Sisu or something else in play, taking out the Beast completely. But that was the main reason for going 4 and 4 on Brawl and Elsa was. I just kind of want to have max answers to Diablo.
Hmm.
Um,
So in terms
I
of
think
matchup,
she's
yeah, go ahead.
yeah. I think she's got like she has merit in like some other matchups. Like you might randomly at a challenge get paired into hyper aggro or small case in the mirror. Like she's not insane in the mirror, but it opens up the line to where okay, they might have to think about playing the rabbits more on 4, because Elsa can potentially just tap down the rabbit and you
Hmm.
eat their rabbit with something else that's on board,
I found
and this
also
prevents
pretty
you from
good.
having.
Or did you ever like tap down like a Flynn and like eat a Flynn before?
Yeah, eating a lot of Flynn's as well, which makes Flynn a
Yeah.
lot worse in the mirror too. But I was still wanting to play Flynn as opposed to like the Cusco crab lines. I just felt like the tournament being more open,
Hmm.
uh, a more open field. I rather just have Flynn Sisu.
Yeah.
So
I think, yeah, I mean, from my experience, I think I agree with you in terms of like the Flynn Sisu on the play line was just so insane. You just get like
mhm.
basically a free win if you ever get to pull that off. But on the draw rate, you kind of have to hope they like kind of brick, or like you can, it's kind of hard to play out of like a lot of these kind of nut hand decks. Like, was that kind of your experience as well, or do you think um, nobody really opened the nuts on you like in this tournament?
um, I mean against blue red, like I played one blue red and that was in round 6. He's like the closest to like the nuts, I guess. I guess you would say. Like I think he played like a turn 5 Tamatoa into
Mm,
turn 6 Mufasa.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, I don't think Flynn Sisu was like at its best there. But
Yeah, I remember watching that match. I think you were able to get like a Sisu plus Snake like attack into the Tamatoa, and like that was actually
yeah,
huge in terms of like because usually you can't really like deal with Tamatoa, right? Like kind of on turn 5. It's very hard,
no,
especially on the draw.
yeah, no, not that early. And like I think he even had a Tipo, and then on top of it playing the Mufasa. But I think what he ended up doing, like his hand, after he just turboed out his hand, he ended up not like really having anything. So the Tamatoa quested for a popsicle. He plays Mufasa. My Sisu and a snake was able to trade with the Tamatoa, and he only got one quest off with the Mufasa. So Tamatoa quested for 2 in Mufasa quest, but he didn't have like a payoff, so he didn't have a dime or anything like that.
Hmm.
Um, so even though he had like early quick ramp, he didn't have, I guess, I mean, he did have payoffs in Tamatoa and Mufasa. He just didn't have another follow up to that. Like he was missing Hiram,
Yeah.
really, is what he needed to kind of probably win that game.
Yeah. So I mean, speaking of like the one drops, did you feel like you ever missed them in terms of like, especially on the draw, right? Like missing one drops in this meta is like a little bit painful. Like did you ever feel like you kind of missed if you drop two brooms here?
Uh, I didn't miss it too much, and I guess maybe that's because I just mulliganed well enough,
Hmm.
and hit them. I mean, that was like a main concern when I had posted my list for people. Like, this is what I'm playing. Obviously, yeah, like you're giving up some consistency. I don't know the math from going from 7 to 6, but I know from 8 to 7, it's like 5%
Yeah.
less, like in your opener. If you mulligan uh 13 cards, I think.
Yeah. But I
So
mean,
if you like keep one, throw
s-
back 6.
I think something I also kind of noticed in this meta specifically was that like you kind of had to keep certain cards like Brawl and like sometimes I guess like Rabbit in certain matchups. So I feel like
Hmm.
even then it's like you can't really throw back all your cards most of the time. So I think
Yeah.
like that number probably is a little bit lower on average. But yeah, if you're able
Hmm.
to hit the one on one, then uh, you're definitely like doing okay, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I felt with the green steel matchup, especially on the draw, a lot of times you might be incentivized to skip your one if they lead on Diablo.
Mm-hmm.
So we're already kind of, skipping one in that scenario. I don't think you particularly need a one drop against red blue to win a lot of times.
Mm.
And then it's not that again with like Flynn and Sisu, as long as maybe you're playing Flynn on two, like it's not that important in the mirror as well. So like those were kind of the three that I expected to play the most, and
Mhm.
so I was kind of willing to give up, I guess, a couple percent to do that.
Oh, I was
The
gonna
other
say,
option would have been like
yeah, go
playing
ahead.
like two Elsa and 8/1 drops, but
Mm.
again, like I just wanted the max copies of those.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But I was gonna say, I think on the draw specifically against red blue, like I think like Flynn is pretty bad right on the draw because like they basically always get to go to grandma, and then my winning line usually against them is to go like one drop into like two one drops. Like I felt like that was really strong, or even Snake I feel like was much better than Flynn just because like the Snake can contest the grandma, and you just go to Sisu and you start questing. So I feel like I miss the one drops a lot if like I shave down on them. But I think maybe it's just like kind of my play style. Like every time I go down to like the 4 or 6 one drops, I felt like very uncomfortable and like inconsistent with the deck.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably like it can probably be correct to play something somewhere else. Like I definitely wanted to play 8/1 drops, but I just wasn't willing to cut maybe some of these other things.
Hmm.
Like really, I was just kind of griping the whole fact that like, okay, why did Zan have to win with Green Steel in Vegas, and now we have to like tune our deck
Yeah,
for like now we're playing Finders Keepers, like
yeah,
I would have just played this list with with 8/1 drops kind of if we weren't even thinking about Green Steel at all.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, Green Steel. I think the actual like killer in the deck is actually not the Diablo and Beast because you can just kind of like one for one it like on the turn they come out. But I think it's actually Prince John. So I realized like like back in Bucky era, right? Like you can just do this like ink and pass kind of angle. But I think with
yeah,
Prince John, basically also Pete. I think that's the other like card that is kind of a huge issue. Like they go Prince John, and then if you're just inking and passing, they're just also at the same time gaining like a lot of advantage, right? And if your
yeah,
plan was like B prep, they're just gonna set up that Pete or Ursula, and then you just kind of lose the game outright.
yeah. I mean, I think this. I don't think we like personally talked about it. I talked about it some like in my Patreon videos and stuff.
Hmm.
As far as I know there was like questions in the 20 lore thread, right? Like how do we play against discard? I'm like, okay, well, I would treat it like set three discard, where you kind of dump your hand and play to the board. And you said that like you would play it like Bucky. And so I ended up playing a couple set champs where, okay, I was like, well, I'll try playing. I just play it like how I would against Bucky, and like it can work. Like I agreed. I was like, yes, like it's still like a strategy. I think it's just important to like one not flip flop between the two strategies in the middle of the game, kind of, and then also it didn't matter which one you were gonna do. You still needed an answer to Diablo no matter what.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that was like a concern because it's against the Prince John versions. If you are playing how you played against the Bucky deck, um, it's not as backbreaking because they were going one for one on discard whenever they play a character. They were going down a card. You were also going down a card. So if you did make it to be prepared, then they were generally empty-handed. But now with Prince John, they're able to just stay gassed the whole time, even up until be prepared. So even if they don't have Ursula or they don't have Pete, and you be prepared them on seven, they still have kind of like a full grip again. So you're gonna need to potentially have answers
Yeah.
for whatever they're gonna have.
Yeah, I find anytime they play Prince John, you basically lose. Like I find that card so hard to deal with, right? And like I remember I was
Yeah.
talking to Bannable like during that pod with Lorcana Villain, and I think he's right. Like just having Ward on him it was just like too insane. Like I'm pretty sure they probably should do something about it, and it's hard to say though because like what did they do to Bucky, right? They basically erased him from the game. Like are they just gonna also do the same to Prince John? You know?
I don't know how desperate they'll get. I mean, they did say that they prefer not to errata. Like they kind of like hinted that, oh, this would be the only time we're going to errata because this is not how they prefer to do it.
Yeah.
And I mean, if they're just going to straight up ban it, then sure. And I'm not even really one for bans. I would just like better interaction. I don't know. I
Yeah.
talked to a few people about this. It feels like those cards are maybe a little more advanced than like some of the answers we have right now.
Yeah.
Like okay, if Prince John came out in set eight or something, when we have some kind of like better interaction, or I don't. set 10. We're getting close to set 6, so maybe set 8.
We're close already. Yeah.
Judging by some of the power levels. Yeah, even better interaction. Like
Yeah.
cheaper edict effects. Um,
I'm sure
one
it'll
of
come
the
out. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, do you
one
think?
of my like
Yeah.
all-time favorite. One of my all-time favorite like Magic cards would be Fleshbag Marauder, which I would prefer to be in Ruby Amethyst colors, and I think that would even just be like a big help to like the deck to maybe answer something like Prince John that early.
Yeah. Also, did you kind of anticipate like Lucifer? Because I know like a lot of the decks didn't run it in like the Vegas tournament, but like a
Yeah.
lot of them ended up switching to that in the Seattle tournament. Like, did you kind of anticipate that card to make a comeback?
Well, I did see it in the European list. I think that won the
Mm-hmm.
700 player tournament.
Yeah.
So I figured either most people were going to either like copy Zan's list or they were just going to copy the 700 player tournament. That was more like of a updated list.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, I figured I would maybe see like one or two copies in a deck, which is even more annoying for Ruby Amethyst.
Yeah.
That card is obviously really good in their deck synergy wise because it can sing Bruno, and then you can also buy it back with muses. So
Yeah. I mean, do
yeah,
you
I
ever
think it
try
was
to
a
play around
another good
it
addition.
at all? Like, you keep a finders in your hand or something like that?
I mean, my top 64 match was against Green Steel, and like I did like hold some brawls longer and stuff like that to try to
Mm-hmm.
play around it. He only played one, so I can only play around it for so long, or eventually the game went long enough to where, okay, I finally had to like ink my action or something. But
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely like kept it in mind.
Yeah. I mean, did you like what ended up happening in that like top 64 match?
Um, and so I lost 2-0 in top 64.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he'd never had the like insane Diablo start.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but ultimately he would just play double Prince John,
Mm-hmm.
and I slowly got grinded out by that. I just never had like a be prepared to kind of reset the board. Like I think one game I discarded one early to like a hypnotize, and then I never drew one like later in the game. We played like really long games. I just kind of, you know, I couldn't recover. I was keeping up in cards because like I did play a Finders Keepers against it and stuff like that, but the value that they just get off like making you discard a card, draw two cards, or he did play the one Lucifer in game one, and I had to discard two, and he gets to draw four. Like
Yeah.
if I don't have a be prepared at all to reset the board, I just can't really interact with that stuff. So
Yeah. I think that's what I
yeah,
kind of realized like towards the end. I thought the Diablo beasts were the issues, and that's why it's like, oh, maybe you can deal with, Brawl, Elsa, Medusa. But it's actually
hmm
Prince John, right? Like
yeah.
they always take your be prepared basically before you ever get to play it. Like were you ever able to like resolve a be prepared against them?
Um, I think I did one time. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
in game two,
Yeah.
I played one be prepared, and then we slowly built boards back up. Uh, and I had set up a castle plus a goat, and he had, um, I think like play something to make me completely empty-handed, and then Bruno'd my goat, and then just attacked my castle over 2 turns, and then yeah,
Hmm.
from there like I just wasn't top decking anything again.
Yeah. But it was still like one of those things where it's like he still had like enough resources like post be prepared to like redeploy to the board, right? Because
Right.
he just had like Prince
Yeah, like
John or yeah.
yeah, be prepared was not like enough necessarily. He still, might have had four or five cards I think in his hand.
Yeah.
But I think he played well overall, and like I was happy for him. Like he seemed like a cool dude. He ended up making top 8,
Mm-hmm.
um, and he got his qualification. It was his. This is like he said it was like his first tournament card game that he's played like seriously, like competitively. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it definitely, because I was already qualified, it doesn't hurt as much. Like
Yeah.
stinging wise, but definitely like I guess like I would like to win one or get a Mickey at this point because
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's just maybe a little imposter syndrome kind of thing. Like I
Yeah.
think like a lot of people, some people might know of me at this point and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, like I don't even have a Mickey to my name.
Oh, I see.
So at some
Yeah.
point, like at some point, when are my like credentials not really like worth anything? I guess.
No, no, everyone still considers you the best. You know what I mean? Like when we ask Liam, who's the best RP player? Obviously Kendall. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I had a great day one. Day one
Yeah,
was great.
yeah. So yeah, speaking of like matchups, like what were your like matchups and like how do you think they went overall?
Um, yeah, I had them pulled up. My matchups in day one kind of weren't really what I was expecting at
Mm-hmm.
all. I wanted to play against like in my mind, like I knew red blue was going to be 20-21%, and it was that exactly.
Mm-hmm.
It was the same in Vegas. In Vegas, I played against it 3 times. I was looking to play against it another 3 times.
Yeah.
Um, but I didn't. So round one, I played against Amber Steel, no songs. It was kind of like an aggro deck,
Mm.
aggro mid range that had like Lawrence, but it was using Beast as their card advantage.
Beast. Hmm.
Uh, round two, I played against Blue Steel, no wheel.
Mm.
Um, I got extremely lucky in game one. I was on the play. He had Tamatoa Dime for lethal the next turn. Like he had a diamond play, played a Tamatoa, was gonna quest and like, for 14 or something.
Yeah.
The following turn, and I ended up drawing the bounce I needed for goat for lethal.
Yeah.
Um, round three, I played against green purple. Another one that was extremely close in game two because after my mulligan, I only had 2 inkables in my hand.
Mm.
And I drew the four. I drew 4 be prepared in that game. In like the top 30. So
Yeah,
I got
not
bailed
great in
out
that
there.
matchup. Yeah.
Well, they actually came in handy. I discarded one. I played all three.
Oh,
The
I
other
see.
three. He
Yeah.
Ursula'd one when I had 2 in my hand. So I got the first one off, and then he like plays some things out, and I be prepared the third be prepared, and then he was like, "All right, well." Then he dumps his hand after that, like he's like, "Surely you don't have the fourth one," and I drew the fourth one, and I be prepared him.
Yeah.
Round four, I played against red purple Jim Hawkins. So it's kind of like a mirror match, but
I
he
remember
went
watching
heavy on
that. Yeah.
locations.
He had
He
the
had
Jim
like
Hawkins, the taffeta. Yeah.
taffeta. He had magic carpet.
Mm.
He was doing some crazy things, but I mean, he was 3-0 at that point. Um, round five, I played against Steel Fossa. That was Lore Gains, who eventually made top 16 at the end of the tournament.
Yeah.
Um, and then yeah, so at 5-0, I 2-0'd all of those. At 5-0, I decided to go for the sixth win
Mm-hmm.
for seeding.
Yeah.
And I finally got paired into a red blue.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
went
We talked about
6-0.
that.
And
Yeah.
then yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think the thing is just like some of like the tournament success is also like dodging like bad matchups, right? Like in terms of like green steel. Like how did you feel about like going into green steel like for this tournament?
I mean, the matchup's unfavored for sure. I
Mm-hmm.
felt like my list had a pretty good chance against them. And I also felt that, a good majority of the people that were, as long as it wasn't a practiced like pilot on the deck, I felt like a lot of people were going to pick up the deck on short notice,
Mm-hmm.
not have as many reps on it. And just judging by the numbers, I think that's probably what happened, right? That like it was only 6% in Vegas and it was 18% in Seattle. So a lot of people did pick it up. So I didn't feel like too bad with this list. I just so happened to dodge it and I didn't even have to like sweat about that, I guess.
Yeah. I guess
Um,
let's for like deck building philosophies for like day one versus day two, right? Like, do you
mhm.
put any thought into that? Because I guess like I ask a lot of people this, like, do you try to make your deck like a quote unquote day two open decklist format where you try to play a couple one ofs to kind of make your opponent play around certain cards, or are you trying to make your deck like more consistent and streamlined to try to beat up on day one style opponents?
Yeah, me personally, I probably always prefer to just have like a more consistent deck across like the whole field.
Mm-hmm.
I do think there is like some merit to doing some crazy things sometimes. Like for instance in Dallas, you played the big Sisus,
Mm-hmm.
which wasn't really stock at the time, and it really took a lot of people off guard. Um, and that's great for a day one type thing. And people in Birmingham, they played no be prepared list at all,
Mm.
which like all of day one, people are going to be playing around Be Prepared and such. But the jig's kind of up, I guess, once you get to day two, and it's open deck list. So then once they see you have no B preps, they can kind of probably play completely differently into the matchup.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think there's merit for both. I think like with this list overall, I probably should have maybe just played 3 Elsas and included 1 Crab.
Mm-hmm.
Now does that make people play incredibly differently? No, but I did kind of like miss the like having access to a Crab overall. So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, my general strategy I think is I'd rather just have like a more consistent deck across the field. Like that was another reasoning for still keeping like Flynn, Sisu, Castle. Whereas, I think the deck that you had built was like extremely geared towards trying to beat green steel, and I felt that, sometimes okay, it might be a little slow against the blue red
Mm-hmm.
matchup, and like I didn't want to just drop games to blue red potentially in day one. Like I felt like yes, I could probably win a best of 3 against blue red with that list, which is like Cusco's, you
Yeah.
know, and goats, no Sisu, no castle, or whatever.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to lose a best of 2. Like I didn't want to lose a game in a best of 2 when like if you're getting paired into blue red, like you want to 2-0 them. So
Yeah. That's fair. Well, but
I think
anyway,
that was
yeah.
another reasoning for the 2-2 ladies as well. Like I wanted to keep 2 Tremaines for if you get paired into blue red day one.
Yeah. That makes sense.
If it was a best of 3 tournament, I think I would have played a 3-1 split on Medusa and
Three
Tremaine.
Medusa. Yeah. That makes
Yeah.
sense. Because you don't need to like have that Tremaine like exactly on that time. Like if you don't hit it, then you can just, go to the next game if they play like Automato or something and try to grind them out, right, for game 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or like for my tournament, I actually ran, okay, so I ran this list, right? But I took out the finders for, yeah, the 4 brooms. And then I actually ran 0 Be Prepareds and I ran 4 Tremaine, 4 Medusa. So I basically, like what you just said is like people are going to expect the Be Prepared, right? So
Hmm.
basically I tried not to play it and I tried to like sneak out those, like when people play Ursula randomly, to try to take a
Yeah.
look at your hand and try to steal your Be Prepared. Basically, I try to get them to do that, and if they took nothing, a lot of the time you kind of just win off of that, right? So that was kind of my thought process for that. And I also realized going first, Be Prepared is not that good, but it's like insanely strong going second, right? So of course, like yeah, there was those times that you do miss it, and there were also, like you said, everyone's playing for Be Prepared, right? So everyone's always thinking about like, okay, like it's the Be Prepared turn, like how do I play around it? And I think most people play around it by just playing less stuff, right? And usually, if you play less stuff, you get punished by the ladies like way harder. So
Hmm.
yeah, that was my thought process.
Yeah, probably
But
made their
yeah, sorry.
probably made their Pete's worse too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Basically,
Or
they
they
don't
didn't
do
have Ursula and
anything.
they just like beat you and you're like,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I mean, I tried more to like play to the board, but if I had to do it again, I would probably. I'm still like kind of okay now playing the B prep, but I would definitely add something like Big Sisu, just to have that kind of comeback, a stronger comeback mechanism against like more flooded boards, and so for example, like some way to also sneak like past like Prince John, right? Because I do think that some people are like, or I think most people are basically off of Big Sisu in Ruby Amethyst. Like basically nobody plays it anymore, right? At this point. So I think it might have been a good kind of meta call to try to sneak it in. You do a sneaky turn 5 like Sisu and try to shift on it on the following turn. Yeah. But anyways, so you're pretty happy with like the deck that you brought, right? In general.
Yeah, I was pretty happy with it. Like to get 2-0'd against Green Steel, a little unfortunate, but like
Yeah.
I had plenty of other people that weekend that came up to me that played. So for instance, Majors list was like a little different, but we did talk a lot the night
Yeah.
before the tournament. Logan Schneider, he also top forward. His list was pretty close, except he was, I think, playing. He wanted to play Library instead of Finders.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, he was only like playing 2 Elsa.
And
But
he
we
went
had
to
talked quite
crab.
a bit
Yeah.
before the tournament. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Jose Feliciano, he made top 16. He copied my exact 60, and played 61 with the crab.
Yeah.
And this
Oh,
is why I
awesome.
said like I think Elsa. So
Yeah.
pretty cool for him too. He's a cool guy. He's from Puerto Rico. I first met him at Charlie's 10K, the recent one that they had.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Me-
he wasn't qualified yet, so he was thanking me for that. Like he just played the 60. He 2-0'd Zan to make top 16. So
Oh.
varied results. Like I think that it is unfavored, but like for instance, Majors, was I think he was 3-0 and 2 on the weekend against Green Steel. I don't know what Logan's record was, but I think Jose said he 2-0'd 5 or 6 Green Steels, and like he
That is
ultimately
crazy.
lost to 1-2-1
Yeah.
in top 16. So I felt like the list was like, yeah, pretty good overall. Another guy as well copied my exact 60, and he made day two.
Hmm.
I can't remember his name, but if you're watching
I was
this, you
actually
know who you're
very
talking.
surprised that Jose Feliciano was playing Ruby Amethyst because I know him as like the red blue player. Because like when I played him
Yeah,
in yeah, when I played him before, he was playing red blue and he was like pretty good at that deck, and I was very surprised he actually switched.
yeah. I mean, he came up to me after day one and he was like, "You made a good deck," and I was like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "I'm playing your 60." And I was like,
60,
"Oh
yeah.
yeah," I was surprised too. I thought he was playing blue red, but after the tournament, he was over at the Cheesecake Factory and he was like, "Yeah, he thought that Ruby Amethyst. He always plays what he thinks is the strongest deck. He thought that
Hmm.
Ruby Amethyst was the strongest deck for this tournament."
Oh,
And
yeah.
I mean, he was pretty close to top aiding. He lost to the same Green Steel player I played. And I think he said like in their game three, he just had all 4 Peats, so
Hmm.
kind of just put him in the dirt.
Yeah. I mean, besides
But
that, like, were there any other interesting lists that you thought, were good into this tournament?
well, I mean, the luxury team brought their burn deck that top aided.
Oh yeah. Did
That's
you
Ruby
ever like
Amethyst.
try any of that kind of stuff like before the tournament?
I did not know.
Mm. I mean,
Uh, if they
yeah,
would have sent me this the night before, I would have thought they were, out
yeah,
of their mind. But apparently it worked out really well for them.
yeah. Because I think we cooked up, or like our internal testing, we cooked up something kind of like this, but like we were kind of interested in like Goofy, Gathering and Pirate's Life in particular, just because like they added that additional reach, right, against like the control strategies and against
Hmm.
the mirror as well, right? It was really good, but we didn't think
Yeah.
about cutting like Rabbit. That sounded so crazy, but after like talking to him, it made a lot of sense, right? To like add Chromacron in order to like have a little bit more game into like Emerald Steel, for example, and just have like a little bit more gas, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's very interesting. I think it's probably something to keep an eye on going into the next set. And it's kind of cool, I guess. This is definitely, I'm glad no one's messaged me about this yet because like obviously I would point them in their direction because
Yeah,
this is
that's
not my
their
wheelhouse.
that's everyone's
And
favorite
it's
thing to do. It's like, hey, what does Kendall think about this Ruby Amethyst deck? You know what I mean?
this isn't like this is Ruby Amethyst the colors, but this is
Uh huh.
not the same deck that we play, right? So like
Yeah.
it is cool to see because I think the talk has been, when do we get to a point where we have like same color combinations but kind of like different archetypes?
Yeah.
And we haven't really kind of gotten there yet, like blue red really only has like the one mode.
Mm-hmm.
So for them to kind of like break the mold and like cut the bounce package here and stuff, I think it's something to maybe keep an eye on for the next set for sure.
Yeah. So speaking of the next set, I think I think Ruby Amethyst actually got a decent amount of tools in this set, and like you said earlier, like I think we can now branch off a little bit into like aggro, or mid range, or like I think historically speaking, it's closer to like a mid range to like control strategy, right? But I think we
Yeah.
definitely have like a little bit more tools. So I guess some of the cards that I want your like kind of your opinion on is like this Diablo, right? Like what do you think about this Diablo in terms of where it would fit or what it would replace in like the new Ruby Amethyst shell?
Yeah, I like this Diablo as a one drop for sure to be considered. Like I'll
Mm-hmm.
probably just pick up a foil playset of these.
Yeah.
I think this one drop maybe fits more into like the mid-range control strategy because like you're kind of incentivized. Like you want to just play max crabs and like play Cusco, in
Mm-hmm.
my opinion. Like this is just, I think someone in the 20 lore thread called it Cuscro. or
Mm,
something. But
yeah. Basically,
yeah, I
yeah.
mean using crabs on these things, um, is kind of like the dream to just trade something and draw a card.
Yeah.
Um,
So, I mean, it is like basically a Cusco, right? And it definitely like incentivizes you to like play stuff like Crab again, right? Like, I know a lot of people like playing that, Cusco into Crab, but now we kind of have this as an additional kind of card that you can crab and get some value off of, right?
yeah. And I don't know how much better it is against Amber. So like Amber Steel's gonna already like try to set up and wheel you early, right? But
Yeah.
like, playing your one drops that didn't live and they just get blown up. Well, if they're not on a quick wheel, then I guess this kind of this replaces itself rather than
Mm-hmm.
playing the. I mean, the 1/3s are still always good against them because they're gonna survive,
Yeah.
but this at least like replace itself rather than running out a Chernabog or a Broom into a Cinderella. If you just play this, like, okay, well, if it dies, I still just draw a card. So
Yeah. So, do you think you would play this like in addition to like the Chernobog Broom, or do you think you're gonna start replacing some of those cards with like this Diablo?
um, I don't know what kind of like split I would be thinking of.
Mm-hmm.
I think it really comes down to like, okay, do you want to play Cusco Crab as well? Like,
Yeah.
if so, then I think you would just play for it. Like, you would replace um probably the Broom,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and just play the full four of these. If you're on some like kind of hybrid strategy or something, like you play like 4-2-2, or I don't even know if I don't think you go like super crazy and try to play like 12 one drops or 16 one drops or something like that.
Oh, I was thinking about doing that because I think
Yeah,
if you ran like a library, for example, I think this
yeah,
also adds to that kind of library synergy, especially with like Crab, right? So, I mean, that's definitely an angle that you can go towards. It's like, more of that value engine style of the deck, right? And eventually you'll
yeah.
have a bunch of
I
cards and.
think
Hmm.
I mean, yeah, if you're playing like 16 one drops in a library, I think then like you're leaning towards like a more aggro strategy, right?
Yeah.
Like, there was that purple steel deck that Zan played against that was like that
Hmm.
in top 64 that just played a bunch of one drops and four libraries.
Wait,
Um,
16 one drops? What's the
he
other
might have
four?
not played 16. I thought it was a lot though. Him, yeah.
This
Am I
guy, yeah,
wrong?
yeah.
I mean, he play. He played 4, 8,
And
12,
technically Befuddles. Yeah,
15.
okay.
He played more than 16.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Look at all those.
So I mean, what would
His
you
top
would you
end was GOAT.
play? I mean, it's not bad, right? Like he's kind of employing
Yeah.
the same strategy with like library, like quest out, put some stuff in the library, and if you kill it, you get cards. If you don't, then you're getting more lore, right? So I mean,
Yeah.
if you were to run like the 16, what's like the other one drop you would run?
I mean, the other one that people are talking about is it a Moana?
Yeah, yeah, it's like the
It's
three
a 3/2.
two Moana, right? Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, but what exactly was her stipulation again? Is she can't challenge unless if
Yeah,
can't
unless you have a
challenge unless you have a
captain.
captain.
So
Do we
basically
play any
never.
captains? Is Flynn Rider a captain? Probably
No,
not.
I think it's only this Moana that's a captain. So if you play uh like another Moana, just like without
Hmm.
shifting, then you can quest with this original Moana. Yeah,
Yeah. So I like the 3/2 stat line. I don't
yeah,
know how many captains we have in our access to that are playable that we play. That's kind of a reach then maybe.
yeah. I want to say
I
0.
mean, Pascal's always been good in like
Yeah.
a super aggressive one drop strategy.
Hmm.
Um, yeah,
What do you think about this one?
I would just include the brooms and the other things.
So like we have a new goat, kind of mini goat, right? When you play it, you
Yeah.
you gain a lore. Do you think this could
Yeah.
make any headspace in the Ruby Amethyst?
I still find it hard to maybe think that this is better than Sisu,
Hmm.
just by stats.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, possibly, like I said, like these are like options to maybe look at, like again, like go thinking about that burn deck, for instance. Like, does this
Hmm.
burn deck play this instead? Because I just want as much like uninteractable lore gain as possible.
Yeah.
Like that. I mean, that's a possibility. Um,
But I do agree with you.
a
Like
lot.
Sisu is really, really strong, and I don't know if anything will ever power creep it anytime soon. Anyway, right? Like just the 4 health, quest for 2, like a lot of attack is very, very hard to deal with.
Yeah, the 3/3 is like a good middle ground on body wise, because a lot of times Sisu has at minimum 3 power, but sometimes she gets down to 2 or whatever. So it just being a 3/3 all the time,
Yeah,
like it's kind of good. Like we play crabs right on 3.
yeah,
I don't know if that could necessarily replace Sisu though.
yeah. I don't think it's a replacement. It's probably just like additional 3 cost cards that you want to play potentially like later down, like later in the game, just for like
Yeah.
additional reach, right? How we play goat for like later game, right? Like most of the time you don't really want to play it on 4, and it's just like something you kind of can save up until later. But I mean,
Yeah.
speaking of this Moana, like, do you think this can make any headway as well?
Well, I think if you play this one, you're probably playing the one drop to shift it.
Yeah,
Um, I mean, Brennan DeCandio seems to think it's nuts, and I think he's kind of smart. So,
yeah.
I think it's kind of powerful. Yeah. Um,
So I mean, we did some, or I've kind of observed some people play this card already, and I think the issue is like when you play this card specifically, you have to be very aware like where your characters are, like
mhm.
if they're in locations or not, and like when they are in locations and you draw this card, it's like extremely awkward, right? It's like it's like what
Yeah.
does this thing do, right? It basically does nothing. So I think that's why like it seems good in theory, but it becomes like, very awkward where it's like, do I just not move my characters? And the answer is probably not, right? So I think that's where kind of people might get tripped up with this card in particular.
Hmm.
And I think the other kind of interesting card is this new Maui. Um,
Yeah.
do you think it has any space in kind of Ruby Amethyst? Because I know some people are talking about like this and Tigger and like the red blue kind of cantrip storm style of the deck, right? But you could, I mean, there's also a decent amount of actions, right? In Amethyst, like friends or what else is there? It calls me. If you really wanted to go that way, like, do you think
Boss
this
is on
could
a roll.
boss? Yeah, I guess. But do you really want to play that card? We're going into like, the aggro territory, right? But I mean, this could potentially be part of that. Historically speaking, we haven't really had any like combo decks, right? In Lorcana, and this could potentially make it so Ruby Amethyst can have like a combo strategy as well.
Yeah. Um, as far as like including this on a mid-range control version, I could see maybe 1 or 2. We have a couple flex slots to work with, and like this buying back of friends is just probably good enough anyways, or like it can get back and be prepared if
Yeah,
you're really like in a pinch. So,
yeah,
and then yeah, the extra lore gain whenever you play an action, also great.
yeah.
So, um, I definitely think I guess maybe red blue has a lot more action cards than
Mm-hmm.
us. Like if you count like visions and how far I'll go and even
Nothing to
develop.
hide. Nothing to hide. Even
Yeah, they ha-
distract
they
if you
have
really want to go
they
down
have a
that route.
lot more, and
Yeah,
they can like ramp to it.
yeah,
And I think a lot of people are talking about it in like the red green like Robin Hood deck as well to
mm,
potentially be really good in. But like this could find a slot or two in a Ruby Amethyst deck. I think
yeah. That makes sense. But I
I'm
feel like,
definitely I'm definitely
yeah,
like willing to try it out for sure.
yeah. And then the other cards I wanted to talk about. Do you think so? Now we have like this kind of card, right? Like a mini version of like Pirate's Life. Do you think this can make any
Yeah.
space into the the aggro strategies of Ruby Amethyst?
Yeah, I asked El Rathion about this one because I was like, oh well, this looks like it kind of goes perfect in that deck.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, it just being one cost, and when you're having like a Chromicon out and stuff, and you're just trying to like dump all the cards in your hand, this seems like it might be okay.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't draw a card, but there's like a card similar in Magic. It like deals one and you draw a card. This is like they're losing one and you gain one, so a little similar. But yeah, I think this is something I would look at in the Chromicon strategy,
Yeah.
the burn strategy, not necessarily in the control strategy.
Yeah, I guess I would never ask you like which one of the strategies of Ruby Amethyst would you feel like you are more gravitated towards, right? Like the aggro, mid range, or like control.
Um, I mean, I just felt like, yeah, like if you look at the Seattle list, I think that's more mid-range control.
Mm-hmm.
And by mid-range control, I just mean it has like an aggro line that you can take against the decks that are trying to be more controlling than you.
Mm-hmm.
But generally against most other decks, Like you're more control. Like you play a lot more for board control than most of the other decks. But then whenever a deck's trying to go bigger than you, then you have, a sort of like aggro mid range
Yeah.
strategy that you can uh, use against those decks.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would consider like the deck that I took to Seattle to be mid range control.
Yeah, but I mean, do you like where like Ruby Amethyst is headed towards, right? Because like I think a lot of people do like going towards that aggro strategy, kind of like what Warp and like the Elrathion style. Like, do you think that's good or bad for the game, or do you think it's just kind of like a playstyle thing?
Uh, it's definitely playstyle. So like I do prefer mid range control strategies.
Mm-hmm.
So like I won't ever really be playing like a super aggro deck. Do I think it's good for the game? I think it's good to have aggro decks that can kind of like thrive and keep some of like the bigger control decks in check for sure. I think that's like important for the game. Also, just kind of like for newer players tend to gravitate towards aggro strategies. So to have like easy aggro strategies that they can pick up, and Ruby Amethyst has always been kind of cheap.
Mm-hmm.
Deck's probably pretty cheap. I don't know how much their deck cost if it showed that on Ink Decks, but
Probably even less. I mean, let's take a look. But I was gonna say, like, we've played Ruby Amethyst for a long time, right? And I think historically speaking, everyone's been playing the 128. What are the expensive cards? Maui.
yeah, I mean my deck I think was like 200, so
Yeah,
it's still cheaper.
yeah. It's usually like Be Prepared and like Maui. Usually
Be
are like
prepared in
the
Maui if you're playing
slightly
less of them.
expensive cards, but other than that, it's
I
yeah,
think
like you said.
Fox and Rabbit, which they're not playing, is what
Mm,
throws
like
in like more cost.
Castle's like
And
moderately
Castle.
expensive, yeah. But it's like yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think it's fine for aggro strategies. I mean I've kind of felt this because like we still haven't gotten crazy upgrades
Mm-hmm.
in a while. At least I mean maybe I'm speaking too soon here. But like the deck has kind of stayed the same over the last three sets,
Mm-hmm.
and definitely decks have caught up in power level. They're getting faster, stuff like that. And so it does feel like Ruby Amethyst might be getting power crept out. I think someone mentioned this the other day in a local Discord. That like
Mm-hmm.
Ruby Amethyst playability. I mean, it's just slowly becoming worse.
Yeah.
Somehow it finds a way, right, and we're still doing good. But it's looking like for this set, like a potentially a strategy of just like removal spells plus draw cards might not even be good enough. I don't know,
Yeah.
because like I think when Daisy was spoiled and it was like, okay, well, all we have is Brawl, really. People were worried about it. So the formats keep getting faster and faster,
Mm-hmm.
and the interaction is kind of like not there yet. They
Yeah.
keep they keep printing better threats and not better answers.
Yeah, because I think historically, like why I kind of gravitated towards Ruby Amethyst was for like the lady cards, right? Like I thought Tremaine and Medusa were like so insane, and like they
Yeah.
had like a like historically speaking, like the interaction cards are like the kind of skill cards, right? Like when you're able to kind of use them properly, is when you can kind of get an edge, and especially like I remember back in the day, right? Like the shift Tremaine and then the bounce line, like it was like basically whoever got to do that kind of play in the mirror got to win that one for free, right? And I feel like you said, the format has gotten so fast and quote unquote unfair that we really can't really be doing these kind of plays anymore. So I feel like I don't know if you would agree with me. Like I feel like the skill edge has definitely like decreased, or maybe like people just have gotten better at the game, like over time.
No, I think people are getting better.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think it's also just kind of like it's not power creep.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think the cards should slowly get better.
Yeah.
Um, but it's something to definitely consider or worry about. Like this might be the first set I'm looking to. I haven't been locked into Ruby Amethyst because I'm like, oh, this is the only deck I'm gonna play.
Uh-huh.
I'm definitely willing to explore options, but
Mm-hmm.
right now there hasn't been a reason to really do that.
Yeah.
Um, but
But
if I
you're the
see
guy,
if the writing's on the wall, I definitely,
No, man, you're
yeah.
going down with the ship. You're the guy. You're the Ruby
I mean, it's
Amethyst
getting
guy.
close. Like I
Yeah.
played Green Steel in the Friday side event, so I'm already expanding my wings essentially or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. No, you're just doing it for,
Um,
for science, right? Just to see how it plays,
yeah.
and then we're back home, right, where we belong after the fact.
uh,
So I think the other kind of fun card for the aggressive strategy is like this Hades, right? The when during your opponent's turn, whenever one of your other characters is banished, you gain 2 lore with like the 3 lore pips. Like, what do you think about this one?
I think this card is a really big headache for our deck. Yeah.
Oh,
It
you're
has an
not gonna play
Inkable and
it?
it dies to Medusa. Am I gonna play it in my
Yeah,
deck? I don't
yeah.
think so.
Wait, really? I
I
think
don't
it's
think so.
actually, if Medusa becomes like potentially less popular, I think this card is gonna be actually like quite insane in terms of like going under your opponent. Um, because like if you think about it, like let's say you do the Flynn Sisu thing, right? And then you do like, maybe we'll talk about this later, but if you go like Flynn Sisu into like Genie and then like another Genie and like a Diablo, and then you play this thing and turn everything sideways, like I feel like that's just like a lock. Like it's kind of like the Pete of our deck. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
this card feels pretty insane to me. But you think it's just gonna get blown up by Medusa basically?
This is Wrath Protection too, right?
Yeah, I think it triggers similarly to like Lyle, where it's like if everything dies, then you get all the lore.
Yeah. I think that Tremaine becomes less popular before Medusa becomes less popular.
Mm,
Because definitely, I think at the beginning of the set, I was playing no Tremaines, and I was still doing okay against the blue decks.
yeah,
Um, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if
but
I play it. Are you gonna play it?
it's definitely worth the experiment. I think in terms of having that, it's kind of like Pete in a way, right? To me, it's kind of like Pete, especially if you're like on the play. Like I think this card on the play is like quite insane. Like you basically can't lose the game. I think, where you like I said earlier, you play out all your cards, you play this guy, and then that's it, right? He also himself quests for 3, right? Like that's like a little
Yeah.
crazy to me. So I would definitely keep an eye on this in particular. Even if you're not playing the aggro strategy, I think it's like a good kind of lockup mechanism towards the end game. But I think a lot of people are also talking about like this genie in particular, like potentially replacing Rabbit. Like, what do you think about that statement?
It's when he comes into play, draw a card.
Uh huh.
He's got
2/4.
evasive.
Evasive 2/4. Quest for 2.
I'm not sure if he's still as good as Rabbit. I think people's consideration for playing him was because of the Shift Genie, right?
Wait,
Maybe.
really? I thought people were just playing because it's just like quest for
I
2.
mean, it is. It
It's
is like it
insane.
does quest for two. Like it's more
Yeah.
aggressive than Rabbit, but it's not gonna.
Like
I
this one.
think people. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think that people like because when the other Genie first came out, and people were like, "Oh, this thing's way more insane
Mm-hmm.
than Rabbit," and they quickly realized that if ever they played that Genie and it like died to Medusa, then it was just the worst card ever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like Rabbit was always guaranteed 2 cards,
Yep.
and I mean this is at least worth a card up front, like replaces itself. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know,
But I
maybe
think
do a 3-1 split or something. I don't think it's better than Rabbit.
like I know some people are like, let's just cut the bounce package completely. Like, what do you think about those people?
Mhm. I mean, the luxury team did it. Like this might
Yeah.
go in their deck
Yeah. I feel
because
like
it's
this
just
would fit
way
very
more
nicely in
aggressive
that.
than Rabbit. Yeah.
Yeah. Because the 4 health is
I
quite a
d-
bit, right? And it's evasive. So you can just start
yeah.
questing away with it, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's and I guess it being a 2/4, like it doesn't die to that Elsa. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, I think again, like this set is introducing a lot of cards to where we've already seen it at the end of this set, where or the current set, where people are starting to branch into different strategies in the same color.
Mm-hmm.
So, like this again, I think this card is good enough. Is it good enough in the mid-range control deck? But is it better than Rabbit? No.
Mm-hmm.
But like, is this better in an aggressive deck? I think so.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, like when I saw it, I really didn't think it was gonna have any place in Ruby Amethyst at all. But I guess in the aggressive strategies, I think it definitely is probably a lot better just because has more
I
health,
feel like
has evasive. Yeah.
those 2 cards are definitely really good in a Mufasa deck. Yellow purple Mufasa.
Oh, like this genie?
Uh, no, the other. I mean, just the other genie.
Oh, the draw 3 genie?
No, the one you were just showing.
Oh, this one.
That one, that one
Yeah.
in Hades better than Mufasa.
Oh, I think your camera went off.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, just them having enters ability. Like, think about how many times you kill Mufasa to then be prepared the board, and if they hit Hades off of that.
Mm-hmm. That's
One
true.
sec.
Yeah.
Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Oh. Oh no, I just cut off. That's weird.
There you
There we
go.
go.
Yep.
Hopefully you have some editing skills. Or you
Sure.
can just
No, we're just
cut it
gonna leave
like
it.
that.
We're
I don't
just gonna,
care.
we're just gonna go like it's part of the fun, raw and uncut. But I think some people actually are talking about like comboing this genie with this scar in particular, like the teeth scar, right? Like you get the teeth ambitions build.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, yeah. Hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. So like this scar, right? Like the teeth and ambition scar, where you just like you play the genie, draw the card, then you give it to 2 damage, quest for 2, and then you're kind of like threatening to quest for 5, right? The following turn. Like I think that probably also has some merit, right? Have you seen this card?
Yes. Every single one of these you showed me though is uninkable.
That's true. So it's kind of like where does the space come from, right? Might take the ladies
Yeah.
spot, you know what I mean? Because I feel like, do you feel like the ladies kind of like got power crept out of the game? Like uninkable 6 is like very hard to get to.
Not Medusa. Like I said,
Mm.
I always feel like Tremaine, because again, like Deck's just becoming more aggressive and stuff. Tremaine's just like not really it on a wide board. It's obviously great against the blue strategies, but
Hmm.
I mean Medusa's just, I don't know. I feel like I think she can still hang with all of these cards.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, against this, if you're able to like blow up a Hades right with the Medusa, that's really good.
Yeah.
But I think for my philosophy is like you always want to like be prep first. Like Medusa is obviously very good on 6, just because like you got to handle whatever kind of things that like Diablo Beast, Hiram, those kind of cards. And then I feel like the Tremaine gets much better after you beat prep, and then they're like, well, let me play this Tamatoa, right? And then that's when you blow it up,
Yeah.
and that's where it gets like most of its value.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the other card, like, in terms of combo, right? Like the Tigger, Maui, Storm style deck. Yeah, I guess we talked about, like, maybe we don't have enough actions, right? Probably the red blue is, like, slightly better for this kind of style deck.
Yeah, I mean, unless if you're playing the Amethyst Chromicons and you're playing It Calls Me and
Mm-hmm.
here's my camera again. But yeah, playing It Calls Me and the ping thing, the one we just looked at, the one drop. They
Yeah.
lose one, you gain one. And then
Yeah.
Tigger's also gaining an additional one. Like that card becomes a lot better with that Tigger.
Yeah. But I feel like the other thing is it's like a 0/4. It's like, man, 0/4, that is very easy to deal with in my opinion, if they really wanted to, right? Like if this gets eaten by like a Sisu, you're like really, really sad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I guess this card was also gonna making some waves, like being able to kind of just draw a card, like dump your hand and draw cards. But I guess it would fit more towards like that aggro strategy, right? This Yzmo.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have been talking about this blue-green discard deck, and if they
Mm-hmm.
turbo make you discard your hand on turn 4, you discard your whole hand, then this could be fine. You have that in play, and you're like, okay, doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Just like draw 3 cards.
Yeah, I think the problem with that is like surely they have some way to deal with this card, right? But I guess like what answers do they
Mm.
really have right to this like 3/3 Yzma if they want to go for that dump play?
In the list I've seen, it's just like you're welcome, and
Mm.
even then, like you're drawing 2 off of that.
No, they're gonna you're welcome and then dump your whole hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like it's still kind of rough, but Do you think this could make any kind of headspace in like the mid-range control style of the deck?
I don't think so, because typically we would always just probably have more than 3 cards in our hand. But yeah, in a more aggressive deck,
Mm-hmm.
like if we're talking about we want to play the 16 1 drops and stuff like that, like then I think this could be really good.
Yeah. Or maybe I was thinking like maybe like some kind of hybrid where you play like, the 12 cantrip cards and you kind of spill out your hand and then you draw the cards and then afterwards you recover them afterwards. So, I mean, I kind of stole that idea from like just like playing Clarabelle, right? It's like kind of what they do, right? Try to spill everything and kind of recover everything after that. So, I don't
Hmm.
know, maybe somebody will cook some kind of fun deck with that. And I guess this Mickey is kind of fun, but I don't know if it belongs in Ruby Amethyst. I guess as a captain, so you can start, attacking with your Moana or whatever. But yeah, I don't know if this can make any headspace in the regular deck. But anyways, yeah, thanks for coming on. And where can people find you?
My Twitter is actual. No, I'm not. That's mostly where you'll find me. I have other socials, but I'm not as active on there. So
Mm.
go
Any
follow my Twitter.
yeah, any shout outs you want to give before we head out?
Mostly just shout out my team. Team Labyrinth.
Mm-hmm.
Um, awesome team. Wonder won Seattle. So
Mm-hmm.
hopefully we can get a bunch of us qualified for Worlds, Continentals.
Yeah.
Shout out to you and Luca, who's grounded right now.
Shout out to you, Luca. Uh,
Yeah.
but are you going to any like set six kind of tournaments before Continentals, or are you kind of just playing in secret, as it were?
I'm debating on I do want to go to Star City Columbus, which is in like 2 weeks. The problem is that it is release week
Mm.
for Azurite Sea, and if I want to travel to Columbus, I also can't like get my cards to have my cards there.
Mm-hmm.
I would basically just be having to spew money to buy cards up there on release week to play with that weekend, and because it's a 1K and a 2K and a 1K, I don't think the EV is really there. It would mostly just be for
Practice for
fun
fun.
purposes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, because I think I can practice better online than going up there. But and then the other thing is the Charlie's 8K, which is like the weekend of December 14th.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be set 6 as well. It will be a week after the European um, Continentals.
Mm. Like, what do you think the meta? Well, I mean, it's hard to tell right now, right? But I mean, this is like our first kind of continental tournament, right? And I guess EU is having theirs first before like we are.
Right.
So, like, what do you think the testing is going to be like for that? Do you think there's going to be like a lot of secret going on, or do you think people are going to, publicly try to play what they're going to play?
I mean, I think it'll be a smaller field, and I think like for the most part, I think there'll be some number of people like on a team or testing teams.
Mm-hmm.
At least I think they should maybe be a little bit more secretive. Obviously, it's the information is going to be out there for us. I've always kind of felt that NA has been ahead of EU as far as meta goes.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you look at Birmingham and Vegas, no one even really played the discard deck,
Yeah.
for instance. So we get their information first this time, but it is going to be like almost a whole nother month before we have ours. So there's plenty of time to like change stuff in between then too, I think. I think Sapphire definitely got a lot stronger just by that.
The Azurite Sea, the Explore card.
Yeah, Explorer. Yeah,
Yeah.
that card is just really good for Sapphire.
Yeah.
So
I also expect a lot of people to switch to that just because of that card specifically. But maybe
yeah,
then the cycle is like, oh, the aggro decks can come back and make a splash if you're kind of just ramping on two all the time, right?
yeah.
Cool. So yeah, thanks for having us, and we'll catch you next time. See you. Bye bye.